welcome to Two Dudes Talk Movies podcast. I'm Luke.
I'm Griffin.
And we are back again with our final movie of our Black History Month tradition here, talking about One Night in Miami. This is a movie that I remember watching however old I was. I can't remember. But anyway, I do remember...
2020.
Yeah. I do remember watching it, and I don't remember much... Like, now that I've rewatched it, I remember, but prior to rewatching it, I didn't really remember anything other than the four of them standing on the roof for some reason. And I don't know why that stuck with me, but it did. So then whenever I was trying to pick what I wanted to watch to close this out, that's just what came to mind. So let's talk a little bit about that. The movie stars Eli Goree as boxer Cassius Clay, who's later known as Muhammad Ali, Leslie Odom Jr. as singer Sam Cooke, Aldous Hodge as NFL star Jim Brown, and Kingsley Ben-Adir as civil rights leader Malcolm X as the main characters. And the film is inspired by true events where the four of them did actually meet at one point after Cassius won a fight, and it was later made into a play.
Yeah.
And this movie is an adaptation of that play, which I think the play was like 2013.
It was, I don't know, but
yeah, I want to say 2013, but it's an adaptation of that, and literally just follows the group of them as they talk and have a meeting, and just discuss the state of the world at that time and the civil rights movement.
Yeah.
And it was interesting researching it because I forgot that it was, like, I knew it was based on a true event, but I forgot that it was mainly the meeting that for sure happened, the contents of which was kind of up for interpretation based on different autobiographies and sources. But I was trying to look at like different things that did happen. The fact they have a scene in there where like they're trying to find food and all they have is vanilla ice cream. That did happen. Yeah. That is actually the only thing that they had to eat. The epilogue that kind of shows each of the characters in like a reel is not necessarily in chronological order. Which is fine, but
imagine only having vanilla ice cream, dude. That'd suck.
Yeah. So it's little things like that, but it's nothing detrimental. But let's get into some talking about this, Griffin. What are you thinking?
So I did not know like anything about this movie before you'd mentioned it, but I feel like at a lot of times you can definitely kind of tell it's based on a play because it's like they did meet at one point, but like at the same time too, it's like it's sort of fictionalized so that it kind of, you know, can tell a bigger story. So it's like it takes place mostly in their hotel room. It does go like through a few different settings, but for the majority of the movie, it's either like in the hotel room or like on the roof or just within the premises of the hotel. And
yeah, I noticed that as I was watching it too. I don't remember, like I said, much of the first time that I watched it, but rewatching it, I picked up on that a lot more because I think at the time that I first watched it, I didn't have that kind of like critical lens of watching things like I do now. But yeah, rewatching, I definitely noticed that, and I think that makes it just a little bit boring at times.
Yeah.
There's an argument to be made for certain movies that it just are like, oh, it's just characters talking. I know occasionally some people bring that up about Oppenheimer. And I can see the argument, but me personally, I don't care about that argument. I don't think it works. But like, I get the point here. I kind of agree with it. I'm not fully there because there are parts of this dialogue that I'll explain here in a minute that I really do like. But it does get to a point where it's like nothing's happening. They're just talking.
Right.
And then you get to that final montage and you're like, now this is some action. Like, we're moving here. But yeah, I can see that point.
I'd say like the first half of the movie is like kind of like getting everyone to where they need to be. Like it's 4 different stories and then they kind of all meet in that hotel room. And like for that first part of the movie, I wasn't like the biggest fan of, but then like after that, I think like they tackled like what they needed to talk. We'll get into that more, but like, I feel like they handled that discussion pretty well in the second half, even if it was just kind of like talking in a hotel room for the most part.
Yeah. And as much as I get slightly bored at the way that the conversation happens because it really is just characters in a room debating and conversating. But
with the way that format happens, like you can kind of tell, like, yeah, no, this is a play adaptation, because it's just like they do not move location like much at all. It's just like kind of dialogue, which is kind of how plays work. But like at the same time, if you're bringing it to screen, it just doesn't have that much interesting movement.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and that being said, I will say that I do like the dialogue captures a very realistic vibe. I feel like something we kind of forget about when watching movies is that it is sensationalized, right? Where we have, sorry, my throat went out for a second, but we have these conversations where you're not really leaving the room very often.
Right.
Could you imagine if two dudes switched scenes every 5 minutes? Like, it would be abysmal. But keeping them kind of in this locale, but then weaving the dialogue together through emotional moments, jokes, banter, heated arguments, that sort of thing.
Very heated arguments.
Yeah, it's captivating to watch those things and kind of keeps you on your toes, but I still get the vibe that it's a little too stagey at times, and there's not really a good way to get around that. It's an adaptation. It adapts well, so I can't really hate it for doing that.
Right. But at the same time, you can tell it was adapted from a play sometimes.
Yeah. But these characters and actors, we got to talk about that.
Oh, yeah.
I love the actors in this. I occasionally will watch things that I feel like I'm watching the actor, not the character. I don't have that distinction here. If I see Odom Jr. walk on as Sam Cooke, I'm not seeing him. I see Sam Cooke. Like, if I'm watching Benadir show up as Malcolm X, I'm watching Malcolm X. You know, that sort of thing.
And like with Gory, he presents his name as like Cassius Clay, which he later changes to like Cassius X, and then later Muhammad Ali. Like, at first I didn't even know that was Muhammad Ali until like later on I was like, oh wait, no, he's a boxer. I kind of pieced it together in the middle of the movie. That's like, wait a minute, I think I know who this is. I was like, I thought like it could have been like some other boxer, but then like taking a closer look at the actor, it's like, no, this looks like Muhammad Ali.
Yeah, because I had a similar moment where I remember. Okay, I got back to this rewatch of it. Right, saw Jim Brown, Sam Cooke, Malcolm X, and I'm like, I know these people. I know who they are. But something with the name Cassius Clay didn't click with me, and I just could not remember for the life of me who it was. And then seeing that it was a boxer, I was like, I swear to God, this was meant to be not Mahershala Ali, sorry, Muhammad Ali. Yeah, two different Alis, both goats. But then I like just quickly Google it, and sure enough, like, yeah, I was right. So yippee. But I really do like their acting. It comes across very earnest and heartfelt, and I think casting Odom Jr. as Sam Cooke was a absolute masterclass of a casting, because he's got a strong voice, and Sam Cooke has a very distinct pitch, I guess you could say, and he hits those notes really well. Whenever we get to the ending montage where, what's the song name? I wrote it down. A Change Is Gonna Come, right? Beautiful. Like, the original song is great. And then watching Odom Jr. sing, what's the name of it? It's like like a re-recording, but
A cover?
Yeah, basically a cover of it is just beautiful. So all the praise there.
Yeah, I thought his singing was pretty good. I liked.
Yeah. Cinematography is also something that like I'm mixed on, right? I do love the composition of it. I understand that you're limited set wise because it's an adaptation of play. You're kind of limited in these spots, or same spots. But the way that they pose characters and can like make the space feel kind of large as characters bounce around between the beds or move throughout the room into the living space, the kitchen. It's nice that there's framing to break that up, but it's kind of flat outside of that. Nothing really happens. Granted, it doesn't need to be anything fancy, but there's also like minor continuity errors. And this isn't like a problem I would dock points for on the continuity wise, because it's only like 2 instances where there's a shallow depth of field, and I think it's Sam Cooke is like standing in one spot, but then when the camera cuts, it's greater depth of field, and he's like in a different spot, just like slightly over. And then there's one in the car where Cassius has his arm like on the window, and then he moves it at the end of the shot, but it cuts from the driver's seat side looking over, and his arm is back on the window again. So like
Yeah.
it's very minor things that do not matter, but they just catch my eye.
I mean, like, yeah, you've never liked a movie, so I mean, there's probably something to be said for the cinematography there. But I think like my general thoughts on like the cinematography, like, yeah, I can see your point. Like, you're in this space because it's based on it's an adaptation of the play. So you're kind of stuck to just like that environment. So it's like, I think for the environment, like, yeah, no, they did pretty good with like just moving from place to place, and it felt pretty clean. It wasn't like too jumpy or like anything like that. But at the same time, wasn't anything like terribly fancy either. I don't think it really needed to be. It was simplistic. It worked. I don't really know if there's much else to say about that.
Yeah, and character-wise, I thought it was interesting to dive into Malcolm X a little more. I feel like whenever we talk about the civil rights movement, right, we always kind of hit on Martin Luther King Jr., Rosa Parks, and those are the two key players that everybody remembers and immediately talks about. But Malcolm X is kind of around, briefly mentioned, and then not would it be dove like, into, I guess, very often, at length anyway. And so I went ahead and tried to do a little bit of research just to like know what his whole ordeal was about. And granted, I didn't dive super deep into the research of it, but if I understand it correctly, they both had the same dream of like being equal.
Right.
But the difference is that King wanted integration with the two demographics, but Malcolm wanted an equal but separate level of demographics. So that was kind of interesting to see play out. And I feel like if you know that, then listening to his debates and conversation about
would probably make more sense.
Yeah, and especially whenever he's urging Sam Cooke, like, you need to do your part to like spread the word, spread the message. You have a beautiful voice and you ain't using your talents for anything, right?
Right.
Like, that's impactful, especially if you know that, then you listen to that, and then you get to the end with the change going to come, right? Like, it all flows together very beautifully. And I think the conversation that gets had in the debate from these isn't anything, or isn't as philosophical or not metaphysical, but just like as in depth as it's been in other movies that we've watched or talked about for this month. But it's still one of those that's kind of on a more grounded tone, I guess you could say, where, yeah, in conversation, you're not having those large, inspiring speeches, but if there's something you believe in, you're still going to like urge other people to be like,
so kind of,
hey, this is wrong. You need to help out, do your part, sort of thing.
And like kind of get them to follow your beliefs in a way.
Yeah. But no, that was something that I was very interested to watch as well. And I know, I think it's just titled Malcolm, but I believe Benadir also plays Malcolm X in that movie, which is an adaptation of Malcolm X's autobiography, which is something else that I want to watch at some point. But yeah, I'm interested to see how that turns out whenever I get around to watching that one.
Yeah. And I think too with Malcolm X, like I think what's his name? Benadir, like I think he did a great job with Malcolm X and just kind of portraying like what his beliefs were and like the way he debated with like the others about what he believed in and how things should be done. And like I think he's talking with Sam Cooke. And I think like Sam Cooke, they're like talking about like as you said, like Malcolm X was just kind of like, you're not using your voice or something like that. And I think like Sam Cooke straight up just said like you don't have a job or something like that.
Yeah, he straight up says that to him. He's like, you don't have a job.
Guess
you're
what?
not
You're
even
unemployed.
Yeah, it's like, it's crazy banter, but
yeah,
it makes sense in the
it
context
makes sense,
of it, right?
yeah. But at the same time, I was like, I could not help it.
No mercy,
laugh
bro.
at that. But like,
Yeah,
that was
no
just,
mercy.
that was kind of a deep cut there. But
Yeah, and this kind of translates into the deep thought, and I know we're really early at that, at like the 15:30 mark, but I'm going to bring it up now because it won't make sense to delay it, but do you think the film does enough to dive into each character?
I think I'll give you this answer. I think with Malcolm X, yes, they definitely show like a good amount of like his beliefs and like why he's kind of there, and like I think his character really well done. I think with Cassius Clay or Muhammad, I'm just gonna call him Muhammad Ali for simplicity's sake, but I do think like they gave him like a adequate, like, I don't know if storylines like the way to say, but like at the same time too, I mean they did a good job with like showing a good amount of his character, and like Sam Cooke's the singer.
Yes.
Yeah. Yeah, no, I was literally just talking about him. How did I forget? With Sam Cooke too, like they showed a good amount of like his backstory and like why he was there too. I feel like the one underlier is kind of Jim Brown. Like I don't remember him as much as the others, or like I know he was there, but like at the same time too, I feel like I was paying more attention to the other three than I really was him. And like, so I think like for the most part, yeah, they did give like good, adequate backstories to everyone, or just kind of like the film gave enough time to each of those three characters, but not so much Jim Brown.
Yeah, I will agree for part of what you said. I do not think it dives into each character as much as I think it should have. And being a play adaptation and not having seen the play, I don't know how faithfully this gets adapted from the character balance wise. And also being an hour and a half and it's just characters talking. If it was any longer, I would have been bored out of my mind. I will be for real with you. But I think Malcolm X and Sam Cooke are the two that get the focus, and it's not the other two. However, I will acknowledge that Cassius is kind of the anchor point for everything, where we start off with him, briefly touch on Jim Brown, Sam Cooke, Malcolm X, and then go back to Cassius. He wins the fight. He shows up at Malcolm's place, wins the fight, comes back at the party, and then from there, it kind of shifts into Malcolm X as the main focus.
Yeah.
And you kind of leave Cassius on the wayside after that point, and until like towards later on, whenever he decides to join the Nation of Islam and has that whole conversation. But Malcolm X and Sam Cooke kind of butt heads for the majority of the conversation at times. And I think that's why I don't think each character gets enough time to talk, because those two are the ones that have the most going on to talk about. But it's weird because all of the characters have stuff going on. Like Jim Brown, right, has that acting career that he didn't want to talk about. Malcolm doesn't want to bring up the fact that he's going to try and leave the Nation of Islam and start his own sub-religion of it. Sam Cooke is struggling to like present more songs and records about the struggle from himself than what he is.
Right.
And, you know, Malcolm gets on his case for pandering to white people as well. And then Cassius is dealing with trying to join the Nation of Islam as well. So each character has something fundamental to themselves that's going on. It's just that I don't think, based on the conversation we get, it's touched on as much between Cassius and Jim Brown. It's mainly Malcolm and Sam that get the focus.
I can see your point there. I think, yeah, no, definitely out of the four, Cassius and then Malcolm X definitely probably got the most focus, with Sam and then Jim Brown close behind. Yeah.
With that being said, I do want to acknowledge the point that conversationally, it does happen mostly in groups of four, but devolves into debates between two. And then after a debate or some sort of butting head moment happens, it splits off into groups of two in different pairings, and then they join back in the group, and that repeats like two or three times, and then the movie ends. And that's not a terrible structure. I think that gets weaved together pretty well, because that helps you balance the different things each character has going on. It's just that Malcolm X and Sam Cooke are at the focus more than the other two, in my opinion anyway. They're at the focus more than the other two, to where I don't really feel like they get any equal balance.
Mm-hmm. And kind of with that structure too, with them like all four of them, then they split off into two, they come back, they split off. I feel like that's definitely very like reminiscent of a play also, because it's like you'll have scenes where it's like no, I don't have too much theater knowledge. I'm only in acting one right now, but like you'll have like different number of people in like each scenes, so it's like they'll split off very often, and like and since this movie's structured off a play, it's very easy to kind of tell that too.
Yeah, I do agree. Any other thoughts you got going on about this movie?
Yes, so I think we kind of addressed this for the most part, but like if if I had to structure this like a deep thought, it would be like, does the movie feel too much like a play? In general, it's kind of not like does it hinder it from being like delivering its message, but like does it feel too much like a play at sometimes for it to really be enjoyable or portray its message or something like that?
Yes and no. I think being an adaptation, I can give it more leeway because it's adapting a play, so by default it should probably feel like one.
Right.
But at the same time, how I mentioned too, with it being slightly boring because it is kind of stagey, where they're limited in where they are, and the conversation is kind of dragging at times.
Yeah.
It does very much invoke a play. Not to say that the play is boring, but the difference with the play is that everything around you while you're watching the stage, like that's the format and medium it's intended for.
Right.
And your eyes kind of are in that locked perspective, right? But if you're seeing characters bounce around the stage, do different things, that kind of keeps it fresh. And you can't really get much of that in this, where the cinematography is flat, because through the medium of film, you can't really do a bunch of insane jump cuts or reverse shots or whatever. Like, you're just kind of limited to be like, hey, they're in a space, this is happening. So yes and no.
Okay. I will also kind of say yes and no to that question. I think overall, like, the characters are able to say what they need to say pretty well, and like their stories and their struggles I think they're very well portrayed. Mm-hmm. But like at the same time too, it can kind of just feel claustrophobic, not the right word, but at the same time too, it takes place in one room, and it very rarely, like, you barely ever leave that room. But like at the same time too, like being confined to a room doesn't always mean a bad thing. I mean, I don't know if you've seen 12 Angry Men, but like that takes place all in one room. Yep. And peak movie, by the way, shout out to that. But like with One Night in Miami being confined to just one room, it can kind of feel a bit stagey at sometimes, and just kind of like the way conversation can kind of split up, and it's just like you can kind of tell it's a play. And I get that like the movie is supposed to be based off a play, but at the same time too, it can feel too much like a play being filmed rather than a play being adapted to a film, if that makes sense.
Yeah, that makes sense. Those are two different things.
Yeah, because I mean, on Disney Plus, they got a recording of Hamilton on there, and like that's very obviously like a recording of a play. But like with One Night in Miami, it's like it's a play brought to film, like adapted for film. But at the same time too, it's like I feel like it kind of being a play can kind of hinder it a little bit from how it delivers its message. But like I still think like the content wise, like it's pretty great.
Which is a weird thing too, that for this movie it doesn't always vibe that way, because Fences from last year is also a play that was adapted to film, I believe. I think that's the way it went. And then similar but different musicals from the stage to film are easier to do as well. So I'm not really sure why this one doesn't hit. I'm wondering if it's just that we're limited in location and scope, possibly.
That could be it, because I mean, it mostly takes place like in that one room.
Yeah, but like Fences also kind of takes place mostly around the house area. That one I didn't mind.
Are there just more places in the house?
Yeah,
that they go to,
I suppose.
Because I mean, they're like, sure, they got like a lot of places they go to in like the first 20 minutes of the film. Like they're at a couple different people's houses. They're in the boxing ring. There's like, I think like the title card takes place in a pool. So like they're in a lot of different areas, but then like after the 20-minute mark, it's just kind of stuck to that hotel, and you don't really move much from there.
Yeah, I think
Which I get which I get it. That's kind of the point, but like at the same time too, it's kind of like
right. Yeah, I think that's where the difference between these comes in, though, is that for sure, definitely where you're able to go. Fences is able to change up location or alter characters in the locations often enough to make it feel fresh and different. Musicals, you're able to kind of expand on different things.
Right.
I think like Wicked, for example, if you want on stage to show the Wicked Witch flying through the air, you kind of have to place it with light a little bit to make the shadow do that. If you have the wires, maybe you can get the actor on stage on the broomstick.
just kind of fly across the stage or whatever.
Yeah, but in film, you're able to like use green screens and the CGI to show more of that, and you can really enhance what the feeling of the musical is when you get there. But this is kind of limited on the flat adaptation front. So I think that's what I would say with that. That is all I have to discuss, unless there's anything else you want to go over.
That's all I've got too.
Alrighty then, Griffin May.
Into ratings.
What are we doing for ratings here?
All right, I think overall the film has great performances. It communicates its messages very well. But at the same time too, it's kind of hindered to, being an adaptation of a play, which I mean sometimes works, sometimes doesn't. So like it was kind of a big mix for me. So overall, I'd say probably 3 out of 5 from me.
Okay.
So, yeah.
Okay. 3 out of 5 for me is usually like just kind of mid. So
For me, we kind of use different scales, I think.
we do different use scales.
Because mid for me is 2.5, and then 3 is like kind of slightly above average.
See, I probably should do it that way, but I'm at that spot where like the 5-star rating is like almost never used, and then I think the 1.5 star is almost never used either. Like 1.5 star is like barely, or sorry, half star is barely used. I think I've only ever given one movie that, You Know Who You Are, War of the Worlds 2025, but like
The Room.
That is that's a rating that's so abysmal that if I give something that, I genuinely despise it, will never watch it again. It should burn in hell. If I give it a 5, it's changed my life. So like it's a reserved. So you're kind of cutting down your rating. So like for me, that 3 falls under the mid range, even though mathematically that's not where middle ground would be.
Yeah. Like for me, 5. I mean, I hand out 5s a lot more generously than Luke. That's
Probably.
just kind of. Oh yeah, no, I do.
Not probably.
I do. But like at the same time, like for a film to be like a 5 for me, it has to be like get a reaction out of me, while also being like genuinely like no problems with it too.
Yeah.
But
yeah. Rating for me, I love the acting, love it. Having Odom Jr. as Sam Cooke, beautiful. Cinematography is kind of flat, but it doesn't need to be anything fancy because it is an adaptation. I think adaptation-wise, it does it well. It's not something that easily translates between mediums for me, and that kind of jives with things weird, especially because you're locked in that one space with the same conversation, and then the characters don't always get the full amount of attention split evenly among them. Malcolm X and Sam Cooke really do kind of steal most of that from everybody. So I think for me, that's going to give it a 3.5, I think. It's good. It's just it could use some slight improvement in areas, but knowing and acknowledging that it is a adaptation, I can't harp on it too much.
Yeah, I can kind of agree with that. It's just like not everyone was given adequate screen time, so I think that kind of plays in my 3 out of 5 too. So
yeah, I think that the discrepancy between our scales, though, like on the way that we feel about it, regardless of the rating, that's still probably about even for both of us.
Yeah.
So for the time being, that's all it is for Two Dudes this week. I'm Luke.
I'm Griffin.
And we will see you again next week with a different movie. See you then. Bye.
Bye.